Hello and welcome to Freedom and Four Paws, the show where we hear inspiring stories from amazing people travelling the world and living their best life, often with their pets in tow.
From slow mads to digital nomads, house and pet sitters, expats and families with their dogs on the road. In this podcast, find out how travel can truly set you free.
Cooper, it's an absolute pleasure to have Nicky join us today. Now, Nicky caught my eye because she's an avid traveller. She's one of these wonderful people who has a story, along the lines of she quit her job and went travelling and found house and pet sitting. And Nicky actually also has a dog who she takes along on many of her adventures with her. So I'm very keen to find out how that works because we now have a little COVID puppy, I think they call them.
And we would love to follow in your footsteps. So you're aspirational for us. We love chatting to people who share our passion for travel, animals, and experiencing new things. So how does your story start? Where did it all begin for you, Nicky?
Well, we got into house sitting probably 6 years ago, and we were both still working full time. So we were looking at small sits, short sits during our holidays. We hadn't got a dog at the time. And we did a few local ones and built up our reputation really as sitters on one of the major house sitting sites. We did a few short sits, and then in in August 2020, I could retire from my full-time job. And that was at age 55. And that had been my plan since I was 17. So nothing was changing. I was going to go at 55 and have a different kind of adventure. So I'd had an amazing job, really good career, but it was time for me to do something different. And August 2020 was my birthday, so I could finish then. But as you can imagine, we were right in the middle of a pandemic. I'd already put my plan in place and already given my notice 12 months before. So it was the ball was rolling, the train was on the track, so to speak. Yep. So we just carried on with our plan, thinking, well, we're not really sure where we're going to be able to go. Travel's a plan, but where do we go? We'd bought ourselves a campervan during lockdown. We couldn't fetch it for the first 3 months because we were locked down. So we bought it online. A friend had viewed it for us, so we knew it was okay. But then the guy kindly held on to it until we could go and fetch it. So we'd got a camper van, we'd got my retirement, and then Andy, my husband, he was a driver for a holiday company. So he'd been furloughed and then he got made redundant. So we were like, right, okay, it really is time to go now. We really need to do something different.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It was all lining up. So that was, we actually we got rid of our apartment and left in Cardiff, this is in Wales, in the UK. We left in October 2020, and there was just a window of opportunity in the UK where you could travel. So it was one of those periods where they said, yes, you can travel. And then quite quickly afterwards, it was, well, no, not really. So we left at that point and we went over to a sit that we'd got booked in Spain. We'd got about 5 booked. And then, of course, COVID was changing everybody's plans, but this one was still on. So some of them had cancelled. So we took our van and we packed it all up, said goodbyes to our families, socially distanced goodbyes, but we said goodbyes and we left for Spain. And so that's really where that bit of the journey started in terms of travel. We got to Spain and the first sit couldn't happen. We got there and then the village that it was in Spain locked down and very strictly locked down. So we spent 5 weeks there. Yeah.
So were you living in the van for those 5 weeks?
Well, what happened kindly was that the couple we were sitting for had got a holiday home attached to their house. So when they couldn't go, they allowed us to stay there. So we were there for 5 weeks with the van parked in their drive. And then as soon as we could move, which did take the 5 weeks, we then moved on a little in Spain and we did a sit for a couple who had got a hotel. So there were a couple of things happening, and as we were out there, we were starting to pick up other things. And then over the winter, we just decided to stay. We weren't going to stay. We'd got a Christmas sit booked. We did that, but we weren't going to do any Christmas sits because our plan originally was to come back to the UK, but UK government had said you could only meet one bubble in your family or whatever it was at the time, and we couldn't decide who that'd be, so we decided to stay away instead, and left family to their arrangements. And we stayed in Spain and did a sit for a really appreciative couple because they just couldn't find sitters. There was nobody in the country who could do that. They could travel to their country to go see family. We were already there. It just sort of worked perfectly. Now, we still hadn't got Gus at this time.
How did you discover house sitting?
If I'm thinking back, it was sort of 5 years ago, and it was looking at various things online. You start to see things in your social media, don't you? That things start to appear. And I think it was an advert for trusted house sitters, and sort of had a look at that and thought, oh, that looks like a really good idea. Started to look at things like reviews of it and how that worked and how it might work for us. Created a profile. And then, as I said, we started to do like small sits to build our reputation.
That's what we
and to build our verifications. Yeah, that's what if anybody's talking to me about it now, that's always what I recommend, is to do those short, small sits where you can get to know the kind of animals. Yeah, really nearby, which worked for us because we were working. And close by as well, as you say. And I think that that really got us thinking about the kind of animals that we would feel comfortable, the kind of pets we would feel comfortable looking after as well. So that helped with that as well. And the kind of houses, the kind of communities we wanted to be in if we were going to be longer term. So that really helped with that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love your your Spain story too, and how everything starts to. It really does feel like it aligns, and the people you meet along your journey, and they help you through these periods of time like COVID that you never saw coming. I guess there's far worse places in the world to be stuck than Spain too. So I'm not going to say that I'm not jealous of that. Now, we know that you've got your lovely little Gus dog, and you did rescue him in Spain. Is that right? What was the story there?
Well, we were on a campsite for quite a long period. It was probably 6 weeks. It was another period of lockdown. So Spain kept locking down particular areas, and we were on a campsite and just really noticing that lots of people had got dogs, and it was really easy in Spain to have your dog in your van. And we got chatting to people who had got some quite big dogs, actually. A couple that we met had got 3 Newfoundlands in their camper van. So, we were thinking, okay, if they could do it, I'm sure we could. And we've always had dogs, and we've always had rescue dogs. Excuse me. So it was a period of time where our last rescue dog had died probably 2-3 years before. And, you get to that stage when you've already had dogs where you think, it'd be really nice. But we didn't think van life would be compatible. So we had left it. And then when we were seeing all these people, we were thinking, that sounds okay. So we started to look for rescue centres in Spain, in the area that we're in, and just generally on social media, looking at the kind of dogs that were available, not really thinking we would jump in and get a dog.
You never do you?
No. And then I started chatting on. I'd inquired sort of just generally with one rescue centre and or shelter, they're called there, aren't they? But I inquired, and a lady from the UK who volunteered there had started talking to me online. So she just said, what are you looking for? And I said, well, we're not really looking for a particular breed. We just want a dog that doesn't chase things, doesn't bark too much, and is adaptable enough to cope with van life and moving around. I'm not sure. And I remember saying to her, I'm not sure whether that's even just a wish and a dream and that dog doesn't exist, but we don't want a dog unless it's right for the dog and for us, of course. So she just said, well, I've got the perfect dog. I was like, oh, okay. Okay, that's... and she said, why don't you come over to the shelter and walk some dogs? And we went over and we did a little bit of volunteering, and we walked all the dogs. And then we walked Gus as well. He was a dog that had been born in the shelter, so they knew him really well. He was 2, but they'd known him really well. He's a mid-sized black dog. And in Spain, they have a lot of problems adopting black dogs.
And
his
cats
size.
too, I think it's a superstition, isn't it? It's so sad.
Exactly. Yeah. So he'd been around in the shelter a long time, and there wasn't too much human contact, but lots of dog contact for him. So they would put lots of the unknown dogs in with him because his nature was really placid. So we really liked him when we met him, and it's hard to tell with a dog that's never been around people whether they're going to settle. So Mandy, who was a volunteer, really kindly offered to have him at her house for a month. And she had got 2 dogs, so she wanted to check that he was okay in the house, that he could live in a house, because he'd never done that. So she had him for a month, and then we went and picked him up, and this is, again, as you said, Sarah, the exact thing that you meet people along the way who really help you out. So the couple that we'd done the hotel sit for had got an apartment, and they said, look, go and stay in our apartment, settle Gus down before you introduce him to the van. So we had 2 weeks before we left Spain back to the UK of settling him with us and in an apartment, so it wasn't too chaotic and moving around and traveling. And he'd never travelled in cars and vans in the way that we wanted to. So we did some work with him, moving him gradually into the van, just getting him in there first, and then sort of going on a really short drive and him going out and having a walk, and got longer and longer. So we did that over the 2-week period. And then we were ready to come back to the UK. So that's where it began with Gus, really.
That's incredible. And you did all the right things. It's such a beautiful story. So how, with little Gus as the third member of your family now, has that impacted your applications for SITs? Like, how have you been received when you're applying for house sits? Because it's been a question on our mind as well. We figure some homeowners are happy to have another little dog there to play with their dog, but other people don't. But yeah, what's been your experience?
Yeah, exactly that, really. Initially, I amended my profile, and it was somewhere in the middle that we'd rescued Gus, not for any other reason other than it's sort of a bit like a story, your profile, isn't it? So Gus appears in the middle. But then I started to get, because this year's been a really busy sitting year, and I don't know whether you've noticed this, but as people have started to travel, it's got really busy.
Yeah.
So we were getting lots of requests for sits. And then when I went back to people that I'd say, we have got a dog, and they're like, oh, we didn't realise. So I thought, right, I'm going to move that statement up front and centre. So it's sort of right at the top of our profile now. We are Nicky, Andy and Gus, with some paw prints that says, this is who we are. So people know immediately they look at our profile, and I've brought that right up now. And also we've started to... I've got sort of a very broad statement that says, thank you for inquiring with us. You do realise we've got a dog. So I always put that up front first as well.
Really clear.
And then, I've made it really clear. And then when we're applying, if it's the other way around and we're applying, I just generally have a look to see, I have a really good look at the profile rather than just the location. I'm looking at what kind of dog it is, or cats, because Gus is fine with cats too. So what kind of dog it is, or what kind of pets they are. And does it look like they're nervous? Does it look like, in the profile, sometimes people will put, the dog's scared of other dogs. Well, obviously, I'm not even going to apply for those. So I do a lot more work now than I did before of looking at what pets they are and how that would fit with Gus and our situation. And people have been, in the main, we've had a few people who have said, oh, no, I don't think that's going to work, just because the pets, our dog's not going to want another dog in the house, or things like that. So that's generally worked. And we haven't seen a drop in applications at all. We are, a drop in acceptances. We're booked up now until next August.
Wow, that's incredible.
So we're not having a problem with that. We've got a lot of repeat people who, when they meet Gus and they realise that, their dogs are going to have a great time playing, and then they want us back anyway. So that's helped. And a lot of the sits that we've done since we've had Gus, they've put it into their review of us. That lovely Gus came along, or he's mentioned.
That's so cute.
So that's helped as well. Yeah, so that's really helped. So if I think somebody might not write that, I always say to them, when you're doing if you do a review of us, if Gus gets a mention, that will be really helpful.
Yep. Brilliant. There's some excellent tips.
Yeah, so Nicky, you're a wealth of experience and knowledge. You've certainly done the right thing. I love your story about rescuing Gus. We were very lucky to do a house sit in Malta, and the couple we looked after their 9 animals. They'd go to Sicily and rescue dogs, bring them back to Malta, and then rehome them. There are so many dogs out there on the street, so it's fantastic that you rescued
Yeah,
Gus.
it's lovely.
You scored the jackpot with you. Now, starting out, what are some of the learnings you've picked up along the way? What are some advice and tips you'd give to someone who wants to join Trusted House Sit or House Sit, and especially for those people who want to take a dog with them? What sort of advice would you offer?
Anything else on top of what you've already shared?
Yeah. I think the key things for us are about setting your boundaries. Don't be so keen to do a sit that you forget that your animal, your pet, your dog is the most important thing in your family as well. The most important thing to the people you're sitting for will be their pets, but you've got your pet with you as well, and they have to be a priority, and that you've got to set some boundaries, because we've had people who have approached us that I think are so keen to travel now and perhaps have struggled to get a sitter, that they've gone, yeah, the dog will be fine. And then when I've looked at the profile, I've just thought, everyone. It's just not right for Gus. So I've had to look at what's right for him as well. We recently sat for 2 Dalmatian puppies who were absolutely gorgeous, but they were just a little bit too much for Gus. Yeah. So they were just had a little bit too much energy. So it is as well about being quite selective, I think. Not just about location anymore for us, it's about what fits with Gus, what works, and more generally, from a sit perspective, what works in terms of other animals. Because like you, we've sat for people who have got chickens, horses, cats, and we did a sit recently in Mid Wales who had got horse, 2 dogs, cat. Now, Gus is fine with dogs, cats, and to some extent horses, but he's not got a lot of experience of that. So again, I was really careful about the way that we introduced him to the horse and made sure that he was not, wanting to give the horse too much attention. But also, knowing that she'd got 2 dogs and the horse made me feel more reassured that it would be a settled environment. So I'm now looking, and I think this would be a good piece of advice, look at the whole picture. Don't just think, look, because I think when we started out, a lot of it was about location. We didn't have to worry about dog, is that a location we want to be in? Is it the kind of house we want to be in? But actually it's more now, it's more about the bigger picture. So those are the key things I think for us. And if you start with something in terms of routines, then continue that. So we've set some boundaries that we've then continue to have those boundaries. So we try not to think, oh, well, that looks really nice, we'll try that one, because we have to put Gus at the center of that experience as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic advice.
Nicky, you've been to some amazing places, house sitting around the world, the UK, Cyprus, Iceland, Spain, France. What about travel inspires you?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I've always loved to travel, but when you work full time, it's always holidays, isn't it? And I was lucky in my job. I got to travel to some amazing places with work as well. But I think this kind of travel, it's that ability to see, not just to see different places, but we really like to immerse ourselves in the culture. So, just to be part of a different culture, really. When we always say to sitters, when we come to you, we're there to focus on your pets, your animals. We're not often about sightseeing and leaving your pets for hours. We are focused. And then we've got days either side sometimes. Sometimes we've got a bit longer where we then do what we want to do. But for us, travel is about being in a different culture, about meeting different people, really getting a feel for a different country and a new language and food and all those kind of things that are the normal living things, really.
So beautiful. And yeah, we'd agree with that, especially with the house sitting opportunity, just living in a local street or a local village, and it's in places you've never heard of and wouldn't hear of, except for the fact that you picked up to go on house and pet sit. So yeah, beautiful.
And the common thing we've noticed, no matter where we've traveled in the world, people are really friendly and kind, and they want to help you.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. We found that, definitely. And we've met people now who started out as owners of their pets and are now friends. You know, they're people you want to stay connected to because they're such lovely people.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, isn't it? Nicky,
Yeah.
what's the next 12 months hold for you guys?
Wow, we've got a lot of traveling. We've decided that we're going to do some longer sits for ourselves and for Gus. So we've done 2 years now in our travel plans, which is sort of a 5-year plan, but we can extend it.
Wow. The 5-year strategy.
yeah, exactly. But I think the first year is a bit of a honeymoon period, isn't it? And then the second year, we're thinking, what does this travel look like for us? You know, how settled do we feel in this? And having Gus as well has changed that dynamic a bit, because the short sits, we've got a lot to settle into. And we're not only settling ourselves, which was really easy when it was just Andy and I, but we've got Gus to settle now as well. So we've sort of said that as we move into the next 12 months, we're going to look for a few more longer sits, but we have got a few planned. So we've got some things that are planned for sitting. So this year we've got some in the Midlands, so I can go back and see my family when we're in the Midlands in the UK, so that we always combine that. We've got Christmas where we've taken a break over Christmas. We're not doing Christmas this year because we can see our family this year, so we're going to do that. And then into January, we've got a month in Spain. And then really kindly, the people that we sit for in Spain for a month have offered to have Gus for us so that we can then fly out and go somewhere warm for a few
that's brilliant.
weeks.
Wow.
So that's really worked really well. Bit of a swap there. And then we go to, then I'm taking some time out and going to Japan. So I've got a trip to Japan. That's not a sitting trip. That's just a holiday. And then we come back and we've got Mid Wales. We've got 2 lots in Mid Wales, and Wales, Cardiff was where we lived originally. So we get back to sort of our area as well. And then we get to about August. Well, we've got Iceland as well. We do a cat sit in Iceland. So we have to fly. Wow. That's amazing. But we do have to fly out there. So we have to leave Gus at home when we do that. Well, with family when we do that. Because taking a dog to Iceland is just very complex. Yeah. So we get to about August.
Sorry. We're traveling with Gus through all different parts of Europe. Are there any restrictions? Can you just go from one country to the next?
Do you drive?
You've got going through the borders?
Well, you know, that dreaded word Brexit for those people in the UK has meant that we've now got the Schengen visa issue, which is we can only do 90 days in the Schengen countries in total. So we spend a lot of our time now on the calculator, on the government calculator, working out how many days we've got, how many days we've done, and how many days we can use. So 90 days in 180 is a real pain for us. It means that we're either moving out of those countries into, you can go into countries then like at the moment, Croatia, Romania, Turkey, but we don't pick up sits in those countries. So it mainly is the other countries in Europe. So we do have to keep an eye on that, and we do have to turn down sits. So on the one hand, we're looking for longer sits, but on the other hand, we have to be careful where they are.
You've got the numbers. Yes, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. And it's really having a huge impact. Yeah. And because we're in the van, we're driving. So if we've got to sit in Spain, you've probably got 5 days to get there, you know. So you've got to think about those days are part of your 90 as well. So it has made a difference in terms of traveling. In terms of Gus, he's got a Spanish passport, which makes a huge difference.
So cute.
Because he can travel more freely in Europe now than we can.
Oh, bless him.
But since we left the EU, a dog from the UK has to have a health certificate. It only lasts 4 months, and then you have to have another one, and they can cost anything between £90 is the cheapest I've seen, up to £500. And you have to get one when you're back in the UK. So it would be really inconvenient for us not to have him on a Spanish passport. So he has that passport now. Because he's adopted, he still officially belongs to the shelter. So they have him on a Spanish passport.
Nicky, on this podcast, we like to ask serious questions. Which has been Gus's most memorable sit?
Oh, gosh. I think there's probably maybe the more traumatic memories of two very, very bouncy Dalmatians who could run for hours and would literally run on the beach for 2 hours at a time with poor Gus trying to chase them. So there's probably that one. I mean, he did enjoy it. He loved the runs, but bouncy puppies is probably his least favourite memory. I think his favourite memories are being in the van. He absolutely loves it. He sits in the doorway, especially when the sun's shining, with his nose out, just watching the world go by. He just absolutely loves it.
Darling.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your absolutely invaluable advice today on house sitting and traveling with your pet in tow as well. Nicky, if people want to follow along with your adventures, as we certainly do, where can we find you online?
Well, we use two main platforms. So we use Instagram and we use Facebook. So we're on there as Retired and Inspired, and the "and" is the full word "and." So it's Retired and Inspired 2020.
Fantastic. We'll pop the details down below. Thank you so much for your time today, Nicky. Looking forward to seeing what lies ahead for you all.
Give Gus a pat.
And great to meet you. Thanks very much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Take care.
And lovely to meet you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Freedom and Four Paws podcast. This production has been inspired by our awesome Facebook community. Join the group by searching Pets and House Sitting, Travel and Digital Nomads, or find the group via the link on our Facebook page, Travel, Live, Learn.
This podcast is brought to you by TravelLiveLearn.com. Visit the site today to find out more about this podcast, access show notes, and sign up to our mailing list for free house and pet sitting application templates, guides, and a 25% off registration code for trusted house sitters.
If you love this content and want more of it, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favourite podcast service. You can find us on YouTube too. Look up Travel, Live, Learn. Until next time, give your pet a pat from us and say yes to that next adventure.